With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at usaa.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
Encore une fois. This is the inside story of Paris 2024. 1 year on, one more time.
Skating and surfing.
2 gold medals?
2 gold medals. That's for Team GB. That's the goal.
Well, you heard it here first. 100 years on from the Paris Games, where Eric Liddell swapped events and won the men's 400 metres, as seen famously in Chariots of Fire, European record holder Matt Hudson-Smith could become the first Brit to win the men's Olympic title since then.
This is Encore and Fois, the inside Paris story from Anything But Footy. 1 year on, one more time. A series of podcasts where John and I spending time together, just looking back on what we were doing, where we were 12 months ago, as we had the privilege and the pleasure of covering the Paris 2024 Olympic Games for official broadcasters, Talk Sport. So it's day 12. We're nearly there. It's a Wednesday. It's the 7th of August, and I'm having my lazy day, John. I'm having my lazy day.
Well, you've been there now 2 weeks, which is a slog, and rightly so. You had a bit of a break ahead of the athletics in the evening, but it's interesting. The second week of Paris did feel less because the hockey guys were out. Maybe the judo had ended. There were a lot of sports that never really pushed through and went into that second week. So actually, it meant that our timetable could have maintained like it was in the first week. But actually, it took the pressure off a little bit. And as we've already explained, we had Joe Ankier and Katie Shanahan, who were part of the reporting team for TalkSport as well. So they were busy going to places. I think one of them went to the Velodrome this day for more potential medals from a British point of view. When you look back on these days and the episodes to come, it did begin to get a little bit quieter, to be honest.
Yeah, I think this was the point from a broadcast point of view where we had all been so busy on the assignments that we had to do, if you like, in the previous 11 days of the competition. We all knew what sessions we needed to be at because we had this commitment to covering every session from our main sports that we were going to do. This was the point where actually suddenly things came up in conversation whereby it was like, oh, do you want to go and see what we could do at the beach volleyball today? Somewhere we hadn't been, because there was no British representation, but it had this amazing setting under the Eiffel Tower. Can we go and do a bit of colour at the beach volleyball today? When's the breaking starting? That's
yes.
going to be a new thing. Can someone get to that? It was the time when we had that little bit of flexibility, I think, to try and then just go and see some of those other venues or try and do some other things. And actually, when I look back on the fact, as I've said, that I had pretty much the day off, apart from the athletics in the evening. If I have a little regret now, it's that I perhaps didn't go and have a little bit more of a wander around and do some things.
But you'd done that the first week, to be fair. You'd done a lot in the first week, admittedly at Michael's Bridge, but you had been buzzing around Paris.
But it would have been nice, I think, just to have gone. I never went to the beach volleyball. I remember in Rio, I was super tired one night and I was like, I'm going to go back to...
You got dragged there, didn't you?
My digs and one of our colleagues from Sky, Richard Newman, said, no, look, when are you ever going to watch beach volleyball on the Copacabana at the Olympic Games? I know it's 10 o'clock at night, but just come for an hour, have a beer, watch a bit of it. And I did, and I loved it. And no one said that to me on day 12 of the,
because we're all shattered by that point.
yeah. And so that's the day I think, oh, I wish I'd gone and seen a bit of like Teddy Riner in the judo, or gone to see some of the fencing, for example.
I think the thing though, Michael, you were working every night in athletics, and it didn't finish till midnight. By the time you were out, you had to take Daley Thompson home on the train every time.
I did.
Story to come. But actually, you don't want to go to the Eiffel Tower in the sunshine. You wanted to go there to see the beach volleyball at night in the dark. Now, you were working that whole second week, you were working, and that's the difference. In Rio, you were buzzing around and you could go to the athletics, but of course, you couldn't get any interviews in the athletics because you weren't allowed to record interviews in the athletics. You had to do it the next day. So I think you have to kind of go. Paris was totally different for us because we were rights holders, and that actually meant that you didn't quite maybe do as much on the bucket list that you could, and ultimately you had to look after yourself. I mean, we didn't want a Glasgow incident where you were being wheelchaired out
with the world's biggest blister.
Exactly.
That was one of the most embarrassing experiences of my life, when the medic insisted on a wheelchair due to the fact that my toe had gone to 18 times the size it should have been. I was like, I really can walk. No, I'm going to wheelchair you back to your colleagues. Please let me walk.
Can we just do the Daley Thompson train story, please?
Yeah, well, obviously, every night at the end of the track and field, it emerged that Daley and we were in different hotels, but we were staying in the same sort of area. So every night after the athletics, we would go back to the station together and get the train back, because I think he had to get off one stop before I got off. And so we would walk back. And I've said this before, there are so many different train and metro stations covering the Stade de France. It took us about 4 or 5 days before we worked out what the best one was for us and where our routine was. We knew we had to turn right at all these lights that were hanging under an overpass bridge and walk through there. We knew then we were on the right track. But Daley's still ultra competitive, and everything's a race. And so you would be walking back to the station, and you'd find you were walking faster and faster and faster until you were running. And then I remember getting back to the train station one night, and the guy on the front said, look, there's a train leaving in a minute. If you're quick, if you run, you could probably catch it. So Daley sets off up this ramp running, and I'm chasing him thinking, this isn't a race I'm ever going to win. This is Daley Thompson.
Double Olympic champion. Yeah.
Double Olympic champion. And now I'm racing him up a ramp to get a train. And what I loved every night was we'd get on this train together, and there'd always be British fans. And no one actually ever did stop and say, oh, Daley, can I have a video? Can I have a selfie? Can I have an autograph? He absolutely would have done it. And in fact, he recorded a couple of videos for different people for me. But I always remember on the train, people would look at and there would be that look of recognition and that little whisper between family or friend groups going, it's Daley Thompson. It's Daley Thompson's on it. That's Daley Thompson on our train. Just everywhere you go. I mean, just one of my real highlights of Paris was just getting to know Daley and spending time with Daley, and even the fact that he occasionally texts me now. It's one of the few people that can get away with calling me Mike.
That's what I was going to say. He's the only person who calls you Mike. And I actually came to the athletics that night, which we'll come on to in a moment. And I came back with Daley. I was allowed to come back with Daley and Mike. And I think Daley's son might have been there as well.
You can't get away with it.
No, exactly. So, it was a great moment. And yeah, he's super quick. Daley Thompson's still super quick. He's just pacing. You're just walking with him, but you're trying to keep up with him. Absolutely brilliant. So I had 2 new venues to come to on Wednesday. Day 12, as we say, as we look back on Paris 2024, 1 year on. And Team GB House, it was Michael's other home. We have had Michael's Bridge. This was Michael's house, which I was allowed to visit because Michael was having a bit of a rest day. And so I got to go to Team GB House, which was in the park up in Paris, and I was delighted because I got to see Simon Weiger, who I used to work with at Heart, and he now works for Channel 5, so it was lovely to see him. I saw Beth from Team GB, so Beth we'd worked with in advance so much. I hadn't seen her for like a week and a half, 2 weeks since I've been in Paris, and I can remember giving her a big hug. It was nice to see her, and also Siobhan, one of my old Global colleagues as well. Global were up there doing lots of radio interviews in their studios, spanking studio. I wasn't allowed in the studios obviously anymore, but it was nice to see her and have a big hug. So it was great to go there, and I needed to go and interview Sky Brown because obviously she'd won that bronze medal that we talked about in the last episode. And I really, again, Sky does so many interviews. She is the ever professional. I know you have talked about this a lot, Michael, that she is the Tom Daley of her generation. That when the camera comes on or the microphone comes under, she smiles and she delivers whatever she's doing. And she went from one person to another person to another person to another crew to another, and eventually they brought Sky to me. Now, ultimately, she's a teenage girl, and she will talk to you, but you have to. She's not going to just wax lyrical. She's not going to give you things. You have to ask her the right questions. And I felt like for the first time with her that I probably did. And I felt like I got more from Sky and than I'd previously done. And I don't know whether it was a more relaxed atmosphere, or I was getting better as an interviewer, or she was growing up as well. But I talked to her because I'd watched her, hadn't been at the skateboarding, but I'd watched her performance. And I talked to her about how she fell off the skateboard and hurt her shoulder and how scary it was. And she revealed to me that she needed shoulder surgery. She was going back away to have, and she was actually more scared about that, having surgery, than falling off. And it's the first time she was ever going to have surgery. And she revealed that in that interview. And then right at the end of the interview, she also revealed that, boy, was she coming back for the Olympics for LA, but for surfing and skating. So skateboarding and surfing. She was close to getting it for Paris, but she desperately wants that. And again, she revealed that, and the media team at TalkSport picked that up and put that out there on their socials. And again, I felt like I'd done my job by going to Team GB House. It could have been just, hey, how is everybody? But I felt like I got there and got the interview that I needed.
Yeah, she was the alternate, wasn't she, for the surfing, which of course took place in Tahiti. So that would have been an interesting logistical challenge had she qualified for both. But there was a plan in place, as we understand it, that had she qualified for surfing and skateboarding, Team GB were going to make that happen, that she could do that in Paris and in Tahiti. Interesting that you talk, obviously, of similarities between her and Tom Daley. And you talk about how when the cameras go on, the microphone goes on, the smile comes on. Just to clarify that, I've always said this about Tom is, although the smile does come on with the cameras, it never really goes off. I do think he is genuine. It's not just a performance for the cameras. And he's never actually been sort of formally, properly media trained or anything. I think he's just the product of a great system, what we could now call Aquatics GB, and a great family. And I think he's just generally that sort of person. Is that the same with Sky? I've only ever interviewed her via Zoom, you see. I've never interviewed her in person. But is she that genuine person around and about? Or when she's kind of between interviews, are the eyes rolling? Is she bored? Is she on her phone?
Oh, well, she's on her phone, but she's a teenage girl, so of course she's going to be on her phone in between. But no, she works. She obviously has a close team around her, her own personal team as well as the Team GB people. So I think, she's part of the new way of being a media star. But I thought she was great, and I thought she gave me more material than anybody else. And I'm not saying I got it more, but I don't know because I didn't listen to their interviews. But it felt like, well, this is new information. This was new to me rather than just, hey, you've won another medal. Are you going to go? What are you going to do? How are you going to celebrate? Blah, 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 blah.
And the difference between people like Sky Brown, Kieran Riley in the BMX freestyle is they're not athletes in the traditional sense because of the disciplines that they're in, which are more lifestyle sports. And actually their money and the way they earn is through brands as opposed to like prize money. Andy Murray will get a certain amount of money for reaching the fourth round of a competition. It's not quite like that in some of these, what we've been terming urban sports, more lifestyle sports, is it? So they have to be content creators because that actually is the way that they're earning. So Kieran Riley doing a triple 360 flare, or Sky Brown doing a trick that no one has ever done before. She needs to do that on video in the right kit with the right brand and get the right number of hits on Insta stories and YouTube, because that's actually, and that's been a difficulty for some of those sports that they've now had to fit into the IOC thing where it is more structured. It has to be more structured around safeguarding and drugs and everything else that we need to make sure that the Olympics is a fair, level playing field, and, you know, got a good system around it. But it's a different way to say the way Matt Hudson-Smith came through.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very different. Also at Team GB House, Lewis Richardson was there. He didn't have his medal, so I was like, "Oh, don't worry about a selfie. I'll wait. I'll wait for a selfie when you got your medal." Because of course, although we knew he'd won the bronze, he wouldn't get it until the gold medal bout had taken place. And I did my first two-way piece to camera, as they say in TV. I had to speak to Jim White and Simon Jordan on Talksport all about Josh Kerr because of the result from the night before. Bizarrely, we didn't get Josh Kerr at Team GB House. I'm not quite sure why he walked around everybody apart from us. But anyway, I did a piece to camera from there, which I know you had done. And probably as the games carry on, there'll be more and more, even though it's radio, more pieces, more visualization of radio. So that was one of my first new venues. I then jumped on the Metro or whatever they were called, some of the new lines, and went to the Urban Park. For the skateboarding at the Champs-Élysées, the Jardin de Tuileries, saw Cleopatra's Needle, the Olympic rings, and the Arc de Triomphe all the way down. I've got one of those photos where I'm standing at Cleopatra's Needle, the Olympic rings are in front of me, and then in the distance is the Arc de Triomphe. It was an incredible setting. I think you mentioned a few episodes ago how much I loved it. And being there, it was boiling hot. There were people everywhere. But for the first time, it made me think I'm in an Olympic park. A bit like London. I'd spent so much time at London 2012 in the park, and that's what it felt like, because there were different venues. There was skateboarding, there was breakdancing, there was BMX, and they moved them all around, and it was all temporary, right in the middle of Paris at the Place de la Concorde. But it was just incredible, and I got to see Andy McDonald, the 51-year-old skateboarder who you talked about, doing some great tricks at Team GB House earlier on in the week. He had massive cheers from the crowd. I actually watched his performance in the stadium, watching it. I couldn't get a seat in the tribunes or whatever, so I just stood and kind of hid in the corner and watched him. And he didn't qualify for the final, but I think he was a bit unlucky, to be honest. And the cheers that he got from the crowd were immense. And the amount of journalists who wanted to speak to him afterwards was also quite incredible. And I had one of those moments where you got kicked out of the diving earlier on. We mentioned the episodes. I was live on Times Radio, I think, with Jane Garvey and in that show that they do in the afternoon. And I was hiding in the tribunes, and literally people kept pushing me, like prodding me to say stop, and in the end I just didn't look at them, because if I kept looking at them I would have done something about it. And I was like, I am broadcasting, I'm allowed to broadcast, and I'm going to stay here and do it. And I did. I just put my head down and carried on talking. And again, it's a lesson in when you're in the Olympics, even as rights holders, it doesn't necessarily mean that you get everything your way. And I think that was a lesson we learned over the 2 weeks.
And what did Andy McDonald say to you? Everybody was cheering for the old guy.
I think, yeah. I mean, I did stop and do the interview with him afterwards, and waited a long time to speak to him because he was speaking to all the media. He was one of the nicest people, as you said. And what he did say to me is he wanted to do his own trick in the Olympics, and he did that. And that is what he wanted. And that was the moment. He didn't care whether he got to the final or not. He wanted to do his own trick. But he also said, you know, in LA, or it's not going to happen in LA, but in future Olympics, they should have not just the park, but also the big air which we see in the Winter Olympics, where you just have one massive jump and you do your tricks. And he said that would be incredible to have in the Summer Games.
And brilliantly, at the stadium that night, where I was, of course, trackside for the athletics, I had my personal photographer with me, because you came to watch some track and field.
Well, yeah, because he didn't finish, he didn't get to the final, so it meant I finished early, and I was in the centre of Paris, and I wanted to come to the athletics. You'd had a couple of great nights. I wanted to see Matt Hudson-Smith win gold in the 400 metres. I was convinced this was going to be our first since Eric Liddell in Paris 100 years previously, and I thought we were going to do it again. We haven't won the 400 metres individual since, and I had it written. It was all written in the stars. Matthew Hudson-Smith was going to win the gold medal, so I came. But on the way, actually stopped at the Place de Vendôme and had a goat curry with pasta randomly and some beers on a roadside cafe, and I felt like, yes, I've literally now arrived at the Olympics on day 12, because I sat there on the pavement in a lovely restaurant and had a meal, and then got on the train and helped and kind of hung out with you. Oh, sorry, no, I came to help produce you. Obviously, that was what I was doing there.
Yeah, did Matt Hudson-Smith shake your hand at the end and congratulate you on a good job like Andy Murray did when I just watched you interview him?
No, but after you'd interviewed him, as we'll explain, you had to console him slightly, and I think I did. So I did say to him, I did console him slightly afterwards. He was like, "Probably who are you?" But it was an amazing evening.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Hudson-Smith's an athlete that we've been talking about for a long, long time. It was such a talented junior. He's had huge challenges in his life, mental health challenges, of course, and in terms of his athletics career, really went off the boil, and looked as though he wasn't going to fulfill the promise that he showed when he was younger. But over the past couple of years has really bounced back, was wonderful with his time and everything around the Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games, being from the West Midlands, of course, and a Birchfield Harrier. And yeah, I think we thought he might win that gold medal, but the medal, as so often in Paris at the athletics, went to the US. Quincy Hall won that. And I remember we recorded an interview with Quincy Hall. We recorded the interview with Matt Hudson-Smith, and we talked, don't we, about the thickness of a vest and stuff like that. And it was so close. But I remember that interview I did with Matt Hudson-Smith, and he had no complaints. No. He said, he gave it his all. He there was nothing, I think, at that point when he was stood with us at the top of the stairs, having come up the ramps. I don't think there was anything else he thought he could have done in that race. He was just beaten on the night by a better man.
He was, and as you say, he had come such a long way in a long period. I think we were talking about him at Glasgow 2014 as a rising star, and it took 10 years to really get there, and we saw that at the World Championships, I think the year before as well. But what I love about him is he's just so open and honest, and he talked about going and hugging his mum, I think, or his family. I think you saw him do it, and he talked about that, and he was emotional. But I don't think you made him cry, which was probably a good thing on the WhatsApp list. Very quickly, some of the other headlines. Amber Anning got into the women's 400 metres final. We talked about her earlier on in episodes. In the velodrome, the bronze for the women's team pursuit. They were the reigning champions. Of course, there was no Katie Archibald, but they paid tribute to her when they won that bronze medal. The men's team pursuit lost to Australia for the silver medal. Toby Roberts qualified second in the sport climbing, boulder and lead in the semi-final. More to come on that in the week. A couple of other stories that we haven't mentioned as much. In the sailing, the NACRA, Anna Burnett and John Gibson, who won medals in Tokyo, and we expected them to get medals for British sailing down in Marseille. They were third going into the medal race that day, but they were then disqualified for crossing the line before the hooter started, and they were out, and they didn't get a medal. They finished fourth overall. So that was really disappointing from a British point of view, and I'm sure for them. And then Charlie Hull in the women's golf, she had a nightmare round one. She was 6 over. And again, everyone was like, what is going on here? And she finally revealed in the press conference afterwards in the first day that she'd fell over in the shower 5 weeks before. And this was the first time that she'd picked up her clubs, but she didn't want to give up her chance of competing again in the Olympics. So interesting stories. Didn't always go the way that you expected it to.
This is Encore and Fois. the inside Paris story from Anything But Footy. 1 year on, one more time.
Encore une fois, Paris 2024, one more time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.